Welcome to a new way to level up in D&D. More classes, more customization, easier multi-classing. If you are looking for a fun twist to character progression, then you are looking for D&D skill trees. If you'd like to learn more, check the description. Otherwise, on to the video. Hello everyone and welcome back to another DST video. Today we're going to be checking out the Gladiator. This is a class that I made. It's one of the more new classes, and it is kind of based on a totally new aspect of the game. Vigor is all about reducing your own initiative score in order to get extra effects off during combat. This is something that I've not seen used, I don't believe, anywhere in the regular game. There might be a subclass that I haven't heard of from some third party that has it, but as far as I know, Vigor is a totally new feature that only the Gladiator really has access to. And I think it's a really interesting place to look for new opportunities within classes for the game. But all that being said, the Gladiator, of course, won the vote for the next class that I'll be discussing. If you want to decide what the next class I'll be discussing will be, you can vote in the comments below or in my Discord. Although one thing I will note is also, I'm not sure if this will come up before or after the next class that we'll be discussing, but I am going to be redoing the fighter video because it has, I've updated it slightly, and the video is so old and really doesn't have all the nice music in the background and stuff that I have from this new one, so I thought I'd redo that one. But that will, of course, not be added to the votes. I'll just do that later. With all that being said, let's hop into the Gladiator. This is a D10 hit dice character that uses strength as their major stat, and this is a very important stat for them, although dexterity also matters quite a lot, for reasons that you'll see later. Charisma is their spell stat, and although there is subtle spellcasting capabilities that the Gladiator will get, it doesn't get any spellcasting of its own volition. But let's go into the starting benefits of the Gladiator. This is what you get if you have your main class chosen as Gladiator. You'll get 10 plus your Constitution modifier in hit points, 1 hit dice, proficiency in all armor, simple weapons and martial weapons, and strength and dexterity saving throws. You'll get to choose 2 from acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, and survival for your skill proficiencies as well. And then, of course, the main feature that I just discussed a little bit in the preamble, Vigor. You'll, of course, get this if you subclass or multiclass into Gladiator as well. This says that you understand how to turn minor instances of time into massive moments for quick action. When you use Vigor, you will roll a d12 and reduce your initiative count by the number rolled. This does not give you extra turns per combat round. So if you had initiative 20 and you used Vigor, rolling 8 for example, you'd bring yourself to initiative 12, and then you would have to wait until initiative 12 on the next round of combat before you would act again. And then if you use Vigor and it brings you to initiative 1 or less, you will stay at 1 and be unable to use Vigor unless your initiative increases. For now, you can use Vigor for increased strike, which says before making an attack, you can use Vigor to gain a +2 to hit and damage on the attack. And if you still miss, you gain an advantage on your next attack. And whenever you receive a Vigor down feature, reduce the size of the dice you use for Vigor in this fashion. 12 to 10, 10 to 8, 8 to 6. So you'll start with a d12 for Vigor uses, but you can bring it all the way down to a d6 if you get a bunch of these Vigor down features. Notably, your Vigor is also capped at being used up to your proficiency bonus times per turn. It says you can only use Vigor up to your proficiency bonus times on a turn. So quite a lot to take in, but it basically just allows you to do more on your turn by giving you access to kind of like an extra type of action. You know, you have your bonus action, your action, and your reaction, and your movement on your turn. But now Gladiators gain used to extra actions that can be used by reducing their own initiative score. For now, all you can do with this is increase the potency of an attack, but we can get some new features really quite quickly. Let's start with this right path by picking up a feat, and then we're going to grab vigorous attacks. Vigorous Attack says that you can use Vigor to make a melee weapon attack during your turn. This is a free attack that as long as you have enough Vigor, you can do this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus on your turn. There's also a rider here that says you cannot exceed double the number of attacks you take with the attack action using this feature alone. Which means when you can only make one attack with your attack action, you can only make 2 attacks with vigorous attacks on your turn. Now, this probably doesn't matter very much once you reach like 2 or 3 attacks with your attack action, if you get +1 attack from a different class, and there is extra attack accessible to the Gladiator. But this rider is kind of added for balance purposes, because if it wasn't added, you could technically make 50 attacks using a combination of later features, and I didn't want that to be allowed, so that's why that's in here. Next, we've got an ability score improvement. This is a martial class, of course, so you'll be getting quite a lot of ability score improvements and feats in this class. But we can then pick up this spread out path here to grab Respond with Vigor. This says that when you use your reaction, you can use Vigor to regain your reaction afterwards. A really nice pickup on things like the Vanguard that really love using their reaction for certain things, because it basically allows you to, as long as you're willing to reduce your initiative score by your Vigor, just keep using reactions no matter what happens. Pretty fun. Next, we can grab Vigor Down. This is, of course, the feature that's going to reduce our D12 to a D10 whenever we use Vigor. And then we can pick up Break Limits. This is a super fun feature that allows you to kind of go Nova on 1 turn per long rest. It says, once per long rest, you can uncap your Vigor. During that turn, you can use Vigor as many times as you want. So, say you have initiative 20 and you keep rolling really good, use Break Limits to uncap the Vigor count so that you can just keep going no matter how low your proficiency bonus is. Next, we can pick up a feat, and I'm going to grab Unending Vigor, which is another really fun one if you're willing to take really long turns. This says once your initiative score reaches 1, you can still use Vigor up to once on a turn, although doing so will deal force damage to you equal to the number rolled. Unending Vigor allows you to still use Vigor one more time, but it'll deal some damage to you in the process. This is a nice feature that allows you to just get a little bit more out of Vigor even after your initiative score is already killed off. Next, I'm going to run down this middle path a little bit to explain part of the net style effects that you can get on your Gladiator, starting with Quick Toss, which just allows you to use your bonus action to throw a net. After that, we can grab an ability score improvement, another Vigor Down feature, bringing our D10 to a D8, and then long netting. This says that when throwing a net, your range is doubled, and also you can make multiple attacks on your turn, even if one of the attacks is to throw a net. This is kind of a crucial feature to pick up on any character that wants to be using nets during combat, because right now, using a net kind of forces you to no longer be able to take attacks on your turn, which is really annoying. Then we can pick up a proficiency bonus increase, and this side tangent to grab bonus Vigor. This says that you can spend Vigor twice to gain an extra bonus action on your turn. Now, notably, bonus actions aren't quite as powerful as an action, but I couldn't give out free actions every turn. And so your ability to gain extra bonus actions is really nice here. It does cost Vigor twice, which means that instead of rolling, 1d12, you'd be rolling 2d12 if your Vigor is still at 12. Notably, there is a Vigor Down feature here, so it'll be at least at 10, but it is kind of an expensive feature to use. That being said, this would allow you to throw 2 nets on the Gladiator on 1 turn, or you could pick this up on something else like a spellcaster and use an extra bonus action spell on your turn with this. There's other features that will help with spellcasting as well, but basically anything that is a really cool bonus action that you want to use, you can pick up this to be able to use Vigor twice to do that. Next, we'll grab a feat, and then we can grab Blood Rush. This says that when you make an attack using Vigor, add extra damage equal to the number rolled for your Vigor. So this is basically your starting Vigor ability, which is to increase strike. That would count as making an attack using Vigor, or if you use vigorous attacks, it would also be able to add to that. So vigorous attacks or using Vigor to use increased strike would both give you damage equal to the number you rolled using Vigor on that attack, which notably is actually best if you don't grab a bunch of Vigor down features to use Vigor a bunch. So if you wanted to just take a dip into Gladiator, grab Blood Rush on like your Barbarian or something, you can add a bunch of extra damage on 1 or 2 attacks while you still have a high initiative score. Or you can go all the way into Gladiator and use this feature a bunch of times by using vigorous attacks often. Either way, it's kind of interesting and gives a lot of class choices with where you want to put your nodes and which classes you want to subclass with. The other ability here is Vigor to Counter, one of the few defensive capabilities the Gladiator gains access to. It says that when you are subjected to a Wisdom, Intelligence, or Charisma saving throw, you can use Vigor to add a D8 to your save, which is pretty nice. A D8 will often bump it by 4 to 5 points on average, meaning that it's kind of like a +4 to your saves as long as you're willing to use Vigor to do so. After that, we will pick up Net Knitter, which says that you gain a number of nets equal to your Charisma modifier after a short or long rest. And these nets are weightless and can be used once before falling apart, after being broken free of or missing with the attack. Just a little bit more synergy for the net type build of the Gladiator, because now you get free nets and you don't have to constantly go buy or collect them after fights, because these just basically are on you at all times. Heavy Net is another really useful feature if you want to play the net type Gladiator, or just want to play with nets on something else and are taking Gladiator to get these features. It says that your nets will now deal bludgeoning damage as a D8 weapon, meaning that you not only can restrain targets with your nets, but cause them to take just a little bit of damage while they're in the situation. Ethereal Nets, which says that your nets can now restrain ghosts and other ethereal creatures. Also, you can restrain any creature if it has immunity to being restrained. So throw that at some sort of slime or something that would normally be able to escape, and that net is holding them restrained, even though they should typically not be able to. Tempo Choice is an interesting ability that uses Vigor in a way that might not be normally applicable, but in certain fights could mean the difference between finishing the fight off with plenty of extra health or losing a few party members to get it done. It says that you can use Vigor to take a non-attack, non-spellcasting action. So for example, pouring a health potion into a teammate's mouth is something that I would consider an action to do. And Tempo Choice allows you to do something like that on your turn for Vigor. And it's basically an action surge for things that aren't attacks or spellcasting. And so if you're in a fight where you need to pull levers or something in order to achieve some outside of the fight goal before the ritual's finished or something, this is a great way to use your action to pull that lever without having to worry about, still making your attack or casting your spell in your turn. A very niche feature, but still a very good one. Next, we'll grab a proficiency bonus increase, and then we can grab reduction of use. This is a very good feature. Not quite as good as Vigor down, but definitely helpful for all of the situations it's used in, which is every time you use Vigor. Reduction of use says that whenever you use Vigor, reduce the number rolled by 1. Not only is this a flat 1 reduction to every Vigor use, it technically means that if you roll a 1 on the die, it's 0 and your initiative doesn't change, which can be huge because it means that you can use Vigor so many more times. A flat 1 reduction is sometimes better than lowering the die because it just guarantees that it will be lower than it would have been. And finally, let's move into the left half, which of course you could take first if you prefer, but I just thought it would be better to start with the right half, starting with Rushing Vigor. This says that you can use Vigor to take the dash action. While doing this, any target that makes an opportunity attack against you will take slashing damage equal to your proficiency bonus. The rider of dealing slashing damage to creatures equal to your proficiency bonus, if they opportunity attack against you, they don't even have to hit, they just need to make the attack, is not a bad feature either. Just gaining a little bit of extra damage off by running around is not bad. Strengthened Nets says that you can throw nets with strength instead of dexterity, and also the DC to break free from one of your nets is 8 plus your proficiency modifier plus your strength modifier. So way better than the typical net, which I believe is just DC 10. I might be wrong about that, but super nice to be able to use strength for things instead of dexterity, especially since the Gladiator is strength-based. Now, the Gladiator does care a lot about dexterity in the sense that initiative is based off dexterity, and your initiative score is really important for Gladiator. Rolling like a 2 on your initiative score is just going to be so sad for Gladiators. That being said, let's move to the ability score improvement right afterwards, and then we can grab intensity off the rip. Another great feature to help with your initiative score. It says that when you roll initiative, you can add your strength modifier to the roll. So now you'll not only add your dexterity modifier, but your strength modifier, making your roll way more effective at staying high in there. And there are ways to get things like proficiency and even expertise in initiative, so there are other ways to increase this outside of the Gladiator class, which are great pickups for multiclassing and subclassing. We'll give another proficiency bonus increase, and the capstone of this branch, Bloody Vigor, a really cool node that says when you are brought below half health or bloodied, depending on how you want to say that, you can roll initiative again. So basically you replace your initiative with whatever you roll, but you don't have to do this, it says you can. We'll give the final Vigor down feature over here, bringing our Vigor uses to D6s, and then we can grab an ability score improvement, followed by dodging maneuvers. This is another defensive feature that says when you are attacked, you can use Vigor to increase your AC by your proficiency bonus until the start of your next turn. Pretty good, and honestly, I think very useful on, a spellcaster type build. The left half of this actually does feature a lot of abilities that would be great to take Gladiator with spellcasting, because this is basically access to shield for Vigor use. Next, we'll get another proficiency bonus increase, and like I said, there are some spellcasting capabilities on the Gladiator, but I'm going to start by going extra attack. Honestly, most Gladiators will probably go this way and grab extra attack first, just because you can get it at the same pace as a regular fighter, and it's a great feature to pick up. Notably, you will probably need a different class if you want to get to +1 attack, and if you do want to get to +1 attack, you don't need to go this direction to get extra attack. You can pick up the +1 attack and extra attack from another class, like fighter or ranger or samurai. Next, we'll grab a feat, and then we can pick up Turn the Tides. This is probably my favorite feature on the Gladiator, and is just a bit of extra fun for your Vigor uses. It says when you roll a natural 1 on an attack roll, you can use Vigor to instead crit on that attack, which means, technically speaking, you've increased the area in which you crit from a natural 20 to a natural 20 and a natural 1, as long as you're willing to spend Vigor on it, which means that sometimes rolling low is good for you, which is pretty cool. And we'll grab Chaotic Cast next. This says that while your initiative score is under 10, your spell save DC gains a +1. Little bit of Gish capabilities here, allowing your DC for spellcasting to go up as long as you're using Vigor to bring your initiative score down. And then, of course, there's also Vigorous Spells, which says that once on your turn, you can use Vigor to cast an action or bonus action spell. Now, you can only use this once per turn because it says once on your turn, but it is still a nice way to get an extra spell casting off by using Vigor, and if you combine this with things like bonus Vigor to gain extra bonus action, you can be casting quite a few spells on your turn. Pick up Fighter to get Action Surge, and the feat that allows you to ignore the spell casting bonus action rule, and you can cast an action spell, action surge, cast an action spell, cast a bonus action spell, use vigor twice to use bonus vigor to cast another bonus action spell, and then use vigorous spells to cast another bonus action or action spell on your turn as well, giving you 5 spells on your one turn. Now this of course spends 3 points of vigor and uses your action surge, and you need a feat for this to all work, but it is still super cool to go 5 spell Nova on one turn. That all being said, that's all we have for the Gladiator class itself, but there is a ton of super interesting fun feats that we can check out to also increase it, so let's do that now. Going over some skill feats for the Gladiator, we're going to start out by just going straight into Observant. This gives you a +1 to your institution, gives you a +1 to your intelligence or wisdom modifiers, and you can read lips. You'll also have a +5 bonus to passive perception and passive investigation checks, which is pretty nice, but the real kicker here is to grab this a second time for its level 2 feature, which gives you the ability to not be surprised, and you have a +5 bonus to initiative rolls, which is at least 1 use of vigor on average, especially if you get it all the way to a D6. Pretty fun, nice way to increase not only your intelligence and wisdom and give you a little bit of extra passive perception capabilities, but also not being able to be surprised is not bad either. So all of the features here are really great. Next I want to talk about charged casting, which of course is only useful if you're actually playing the spellcaster type Gladiator that I was talking about, but I do believe there's quite a lot of features available to them that help with this path. So starting out, charged casting says that you can ignore the bonus action casting rule, which is very important, and I think most spellcasters are going to want to take this just for that, but it also says that you can charge a spell with extra energy to make legendary resistances not work for that spell's saving throw, and you may use this 3 times before taking a long rest. You can also take this a second time to give you an extra number of those points. Basically you'll have proficiency bonus number of times per long rest instead of just 3, which is not bad either. I would definitely say that the first portion of it is the most important for the Gladiator spellcaster, although something I will say was pretty good on the Gladiator if you don't want to go the spellcasting route but might want to pick up a little bit of spellcasting, you can grab either Wizard Initiate or Warlock Initiate. Both will grant you just a little bit of spellcasting. The Warlock ones comes back on a short rest and you can take it up to 4 times, whereas the Wizard one, you just take it once and it just gives you a little bit of spellcasting with cantrips and 2 first level spells. Either way, not too bad, and of course if you want more spellcasting, I'd recommend a subclass or multiclass, but this is just a way to pop in the door without committing fully to the caster route. But since we're talking about Initiate feats, let's hop into Gladiator Initiate itself. This says that you gain proficiency in initiative rolls, which is really nice already, and then your melee/thrown weapon attacks also slow targets by 10 feet on hit. And this will last until the start of your next turn and doesn't stack multiple times. So the initiative roll proficiency is really nice, because it means you get to add your proficiency to your initiative rolls, but also the slowing of target when you attack with them isn't bad either. Fighter Initiate is just a really nice defensive feature that you can pick up on pretty much any melee character, and I think Gladiators are a great source of this as well, since they have proficiency in every armor type. It says that you gain proficiency in a weapon of your choice. This doesn't really matter since you also have proficiency in all weapons, but while wearing armor, you reduce sources of damage by a number based on the armor you're wearing. If you're wearing light armor, it's 1 damage. If it's medium, you'll reduce it by 2, and heavy is 3. This is really, really effective if you're fighting like swarms of small minions that don't do a lot of damage, but won't be as great against like a dragon's breath, because you know, even if you're wearing heavy armor, 3 damage off of 72 isn't the biggest of changes. But, you know, if 30 goblins all attack you and do 5 damage, you reduce that down to 2 for each, which is only 60 damage, way less than it would be if they all hit you. One more initiate feat I gotta bring up is Barbarian Initiate. Since Gladiators are such a strength-focused class, being able to choose a skill that uses strength instead of its normal stat for rolls using that skill is pretty nice, you know? If you want to be really good at making perception checks, but have a really crappy wisdom, pick up Barbarian Initiate and put your strength check as used instead of wisdom for perception checks. Pretty much all the martial feats will, of course, always go great with these martial classes, just because they're all really based off the weapon you use. So whatever weapon that you're using, you should really check out the martial feats section and look into if any of them really work well with your weapon. For example, if you're using like a short sword or something, and you want to pick up a feat that helps with that, Swordmaster works really well. But if you're using a scythe, Superior Cyclist. Basically, I would look into this section just to see if there's any weapons that, or any feats that help with the weapon you chose. Finally, going to defensive feats, I think Medium Armor Master is a really great pickup here because it works well with that Vigor feature that allows you to deal damage back when people opportunity attack you. Medium Armor Master says that while wearing medium armor, if a creature attacks you with a melee weapon attack, they take bludgeoning damage equal to your proficiency bonus. And then when you take this twice to get its level 2 feature, when wearing medium armor at the start of your turn, you can take a -3 to AC in order to boost the bludgeoning damage from this feat by your strength modifier plus your dexterity modifier until the start of your next turn. This is huge for gladiators who already really care about strength and dexterity. For example, if you boost your dexterity to a +5, boost your strength to a +5, which, by the way, isn't a bad choice, because then your initiative scores uses will be +10, as long as you picked up the features that allow you to use your strength and dexterity for those rolls. And then you can take a -3 to your AC, run around using Vigor so that you proc a bunch of opportunity attacks against you, deal damage equal to your strength against them, and your strength and your dexterity modifier. It's awesome. And I would really love to see a build like this, honestly, that doesn't even take attacks. They just run around and let themselves be attacked. Probably taking some barbarian levels to get a little bit of extra defenses up, or maybe even just taking things like Chieftain to grab extra HP. Either way, very cool. That all being said, I just want to talk about the Gladiator a little bit before I end this video. I actually really love the Gladiator. It's one of my favorite martial classes, and I made it. I mean, after I made this class, I thought it was okay, and then I went in and I changed a bunch of things to make it better, and it still didn't fit well with me, but finally, this final draft of the Gladiator that I've made, I think I've done a really good job of making it feel unique enough from the other classes that it doesn't just feel like Fighter 2. It feels like the Gladiator, its own thing, its own unique class that you can dig into and play really well. Or you can just dip them, because Vigor isn't a parasitic feature like some are. You know, for example, if you want to play a Bard, and you don't go far enough into Bard that your Bardic Inspiration dice is useful, it can kind of feel like a feature that's more like, oh, if you're not going to take a ton of levels in Bard, Bardic Inspiration isn't the best because it's a low dice, and they don't come back until you have a long rest, and if Charisma isn't your high score, it's not going to be the best. But even just taking 2 levels of Gladiator and going to Rest Wizard can allow you to use Vigor for a few things. Just maybe running around with the bonus action, with the Vigor dash action, that's not a bad feature to have on your wizard. And since every character uses initiative to play the game, you'll always have access to at least 1 or 2 uses of Vigor. Now, if you want to go full Gladiator and really dig into the feature, it can be even better. But it is unparasitic in the sense that every other class in the game can pick up a few levels of Gladiator just to get a little bit of extra. Picking 2 levels of Gladiator up as a fighter can allow you to make vigorous attacks every so often, which is great. Picking up enough to get to the spellcasting capabilities on a sorcerer, a great way to do some extra spellcasting on your turn. Really, I love the Gladiator for the feeling of uniqueness mixed with the sense that every character can benefit from a few levels of Gladiator. But all that being said, we've only got 14 classes left to check out, you guys. And some of those are a little bit weird, but some of them are still just regular D&D classes that we haven't looked at, like the Wizard. So for votes this time, I'm going to bring up, we can either check out The Bard, a normal D&D class that's all about using your charisma to entice enemies and boost the capabilities of your teammates with song, dance, or whatever you want to flavor your bard as. Or we can check out another spellcaster, the Shaman. This is a custom class that I made that's all about copying the capabilities that your enemies use against you to your own benefit and making your own spell list as you play the game. Or we could check out another D&D classic that I have done a lot to fix, that being the Ranger. Unlike the newest version of D&D and the oldest version of D&D, this version of the Ranger has its own unique style of play. It really fills a gap that I feel like is somewhat missing so far in the martial spread, and does so by being powerful, unlike the versions that Wizards of the Coast for some reason refuses to release a powerful Ranger. I think this version is strong. With those being on the table for votes, I'd love to see what you want in the comments below, or you can vote in the description. I have a link to my Discord channel where most people vote. And thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you do subscribe for more. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.